Hello, I'm Stephen J. Pemberton. I'm a member of Writers in the Wood. I mainly write fantasy and science fiction novels. I've just finished the first draft of my latest book, which is called The Dragons of Asdanund. So I thought I'd tell you a little bit about the way that I approach the editing process. So once I've finished the first draft, I ask myself two questions. First of all, what's the book about in a sentence or a couple of sentences? And two, who are the main characters? And then I go through the book chapter by chapter, and I write a sentence or a couple of sentences about what happens in each chapter. And once I've finished that, I then look at the summary of each chapter and ask, does it move the story forward according to what I said the story was about? And does it allow for the development of one or more of the main characters, or reveal something interesting or important about one of those characters? And if I answer no to both questions, then I mark it to be rewritten so that I can answer yes, or I delete it. And this process often identifies gaps in the story where I need to establish motivation for a character to do something, or to foreshadow some big surprise or twist or reveal. And then the second editing pass I think of as the fine details. So the first pass is the right scenes in the right order, and the second pass is the right words in the right order. And so I look for things like continuity errors, because I tend to write a few hundred words a day if I'm doing well, or a few tens of words a day if it's not going so well. And so quite often I find that today I wrote something that completely contradicts something that I said yesterday or the day before, so I need to fix that one way or the other. Another thing I look for is big sections where there's nothing but dialogue or nothing but narrative, because those tend to be fairly boring if you've just got characters talking at one another all the time. It's what's known as white room syndrome. The characters might as well be in a white room with nothing else around them, rather like the surroundings that I'm in at the moment. And then once I've done those two edits, I then read the book aloud. Yes, the whole thing, which takes quite a while. But it's really good for spotting mistakes that you can't spot just by reading the book. It's particularly good for spotting awkward phrases and sentences that are too long and convoluted. If I can't read them aloud, it's a pretty safe bet that a reader will stumble over them as well. So in a nutshell, that's how I approach editing. It's not the only way to do it by any means. It's just the way that I've found works for me over the years that I've been doing it. So I'd now like to read you a little bit of my latest book, which is called The Dragons of Asdanund. It's not available yet because I haven't finished editing it. I haven't actually started editing it. But all being well, it should be on sale by the end of the year, 2020. It's a sequel to an earlier book called The Mirrors of Elangir, and there's quite a lot of things that happened in that book, but all you really need to know to understand what's going on here is that our heroes are on a ship, and in the previous book they were accompanied by another ship called Glorious. Towards the end of the book, the two ships got separated, and this book starts with our heroes having caught up with Glorious again. A drizzly mist had descended by the time we got close enough to Glorious to hail her. To nobody's surprise, the lookout's shouts produced no response. The warship hadn't moved since we spotted her an hour ago. She seemed to be tilting to one side. Had she struck a rock? I'd thought the sea was quite deep here. Raltarn! That's the name of the narrator, which is the other thing I should have told you. My father called to me from the main deck, where he stood by my uncle Tomaz. When I reached them, Father gestured to Uncle and said, "Will you talk some sense into him?" "I don't understand," I said. "The captain wants to send the boat over to the warship," said Father. "I don't see that's any concern of ours," I said. "Besides, if this mist settles, we're stuck here until the wind gets up enough to clear it." "No good will come of this," Father replied. "There's nobody above deck. Half her sails are missing and the rest are frittered. But she couldn't have been caught in a storm because she was only half a day ahead of us, and she's not flying a distress flag, so whatever happened, happened quickly. If there's something around here that's a danger to a warship, I said, we ought to know about it. No, said Father, we ought to get away from it. If the captain wants to investigate, said Uncle, we investigate. You're his employers, said Father. Tell him you're in a hurry to get back to Asdanund. We are, I replied, but the captain of the Glorious said we were obliged to help them under the emergency articles, or whatever it was. He never rescinded that order, as far as I know. He abandoned you, Father exclaimed. We abandoned him, strictly speaking, said Uncle. And even without the emergency articles, what about the well-being of your fellow men? I've never known you to show much concern for that, Father muttered. A splash from the other side of the ship told me that our boat had been launched. Father watched men climbing over the railing to descend to the boat before saying to Uncle, Admit it. You're hoping the Alangics who Baronoskull put on that ship went mad and killed everyone, so you can help yourself to the artifacts he gave them. Uncle snorted. If that is what I want, what are you so worried about? Father's gaze returned to Glorious. That not all of them are dead. Thanks for listening.